Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Romans, the 11th chapter. And in this chapter, it's once again, Paul is in here. He uses the analogy, right, which is a bulk of this chapter here, to describe the joining, okay, of the Israelites that had fell away, the Israelite foreigners, to a wild olive tree, right, because they went astray from the Lord. And he likens that to those Israelites that went away, but then he basically uses this as an example to show the power of the Lord in joining them back to the fold. And that on the side of those that were being joined in, not to be proud, and on the side of the of those that were seeing them being joined in, to understand that this was the will of the Lord, and it had to happen this way, right? That through the disobedience of the circumcision, through the stumbling of them, the gates might be opened onto the rest that needed to be joined into the fold. So this is Romans chapter 11, verse 1. I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid. Because continuing from the 10th chapter, what Paul is saying is, well, basically, God's people, they didn't hear what he had to say. But when he sent the word to the Gentiles, they heard it. So does this mean that the Lord is casting away his people? No. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. I'm a preacher, I'm a believer, but I'm an Israelite. The Lord is not casting away his people. But there's a purpose for what he is doing. God hath not cast away his people which he foreknew. What ye not what the scripture saith of Elias? Don't you know what the scripture said concerning Elijah? How he made intercession to God against Israel, right? So Elijah prayed to the Lord concerning Israel. Remember, going back to the book of Kings, saying, Lord, they have killed thy prophets and digged down thine altars. They killed your prophets, they destroyed, they broke down your altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life. And I believe this is when Jezebel was after him. But what saith the answer of God unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Because at the time, the king being Ahab of the northern kingdom, who was being, led or driven by Jezebel, they were pushing that idolatrous spirit. And that's why they killed the prophet to the Lord and brought down his altar, right? But the Lord told Elijah that don't worry, because I've still reserved a certain amount in here that have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal, that still stand firm, that remnant. So Paul is using that as an example to say that the Lord, regardless of the situation, never casts away his people. Even so then, at this present time also, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. Just like there wasn't a remnant back then, there's a remnant now, showing you the Lord has not cast away his people. But this remnant is selected or is preserved by being elected through the grace of the Lord. And if by grace, then it is no more of works. So if they were chosen to hear this word and to believe by the grace of the Lord, then it is not by any works that they've done. Otherwise, grace is no more grace. It's not considered grace if you work for it. Then it's just debt that is owed to you. But if it be of works, then it is no more grace. See? Because if it is, once again, like I just mentioned, if it's works, if it's by your works, then it's really just a repayment for the work you've done, rather than it being grace, which is not really something you deserve. You're not entitled to it, but it's given to you anyway. Otherwise, work is no more work. Meaning if it's grace, then it's not work. What then? Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. And that truth, you could say, that they were seeking for, right? In the NLT, it says, so this is the situation. Most of the people of Israel have not found the favor of God they are looking for so earnestly. A few have, the ones God has chosen, but the hearts of the rest were hardened. See? So not the Lord didn't give this favor or this rest through belief, through finding the correctness, the truth to everybody. Only those that he elected. The rest he blinded to it. According as it is written, God hath given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see and ears that they should not hear on to this day. This isn't in a literal sense. They could see with their eyes, they could hear with their ears, but their spiritual eyes and ears they couldn't perceive. That's why they couldn't believe. The Lord likens it onto if you're showing an image to a blind person, obviously they can't see it. But that's how he likened them to being in the spirit. So when the gospel was being preached to them, it was like showing a picture to a blind person in the spirit. That's why they couldn't see it. And David saith, let their table be made a snare or a trap, and a snare and a trap, and a stumbling block and a recompense unto them. Which here the table is likened onto this word, right? Basically, they thought they understood it, right? They had the laws, the writings, and that became a snare onto them because they thought by their knowledge of that same writings and the same laws and the same word that the Lord gave us, they thought they knew more. But in actuality, that was actually a snare onto them because by tugging onto it so much, they actually refused the truth of it. Okay? And so it became a snare since they were actually blinded to the truth of the scriptures. The same scriptures they held onto so hard that they used to justify them being blinded to it. And you can see a great example of that when you go and read the Gospels. Let their eyes be darkened, their spiritual eyes, so they can't perceive the truth, that they may not see, and bow down their back always. And their back being, bowed or bent, it signifies basically being burdened, right? Being burdened by a continual state of subjugation, remaining bound to sin, right? And bowed under judgment. Like the woman that Yahushua healed, where she was basically stuck in this position of it's spiritual, right? She was stuck in this like bent over position. And when he loosed her, right? Because she was bound by Satan, the Lord said, he loosed her. You had the wicked, I think it was the wicked scribes and Pharisees that had a problem with that. But he basically loosed her off that, right? Because she was bound, as he mentioned, by Satan. So likewise, David is saying here, let them also be bound. That if they don't want to receive the word and they can't see it, then let them stay stuck in their ways. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. And this is dealing with the circumcision, right? They stumbled at the stone of Yahushua, but was it for their complete destruction? Was it for them to completely fall away? No, but there was a purpose, right? But rather through their fall, through their stumbling, through their lack of belief, salvation has come on to the Gentiles, which are the Israelite foreigners, for to provoke them to jealousy. So the Lord did that it would provoke those of the circumcision to jealousy. Why are these Gentiles receiving, or why are you giving them our word? Like going back to Baruch, the 4th chapter. Give not that which is profitable unto thee to another nation. They're basically of that sentiment. That's why they were mad. But their spiritual eyes were blinded, so they didn't see what was actually happening. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness, right? So if them falling through not believing in Yahushua led to the riches, the spiritual enrichment of the world, referring to the rest of the Israelites that were out there that needed to hear this word, and the diminishing, right, which is the partial blinding of the circumcision. If the result of that was the riches of the Gentiles, the Israelites that didn't know they were Israelites, the Israelite foreigners, how much more for their fullness? So if the falling of the circumcision led to the riches of the other Israelites, how much more the fullness of the circumcision, right? If they were to accept it. NLT, now if the Gentiles were enriched because the people of Israel turned down God's offer of salvation, that was their fall, think how much greater a blessing the world will share when they finally accept it. For I speak to you, Gentiles, inasmuch, and by now you should understand what that means. So, inasmuch as I am, what that means, meaning what the term Gentiles here is referring to. For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify my office. So he's saying now I'm addressing you, you foreigners that are just coming in, because I was made an apostle to you to bring the word to you. If by any means I may provoke to emulation, jealousy, them which are my flesh, those of the circumcision, my kindred, and might save some of them. So he's saying by provoking them to wrath, or to jealousy, I'm hoping to save some of them. Because if they didn't believe when the word was given to them, like don't take something for granted, right? They didn't. If you have something, right, and you don't really care about it, somebody sees it and they're just like, oh, you have that? Oh, yo, can I see that? Yeah. You're gonna take more of an interest in it, because you're gonna think, wait, why, like, hold on, why is this person reacting this way to it? Isn't this just a regular whatever? What's so special about it that they're so interested? Matter of fact, maybe because they're interested now, I don't think I want to give it away. I think I'm gonna hold on to it because there might be something more to it. And then you start paying more attention to it. So through the interest of others, you get interested. So Paul is saying here, I'm hoping that by pushing this, right, and teaching this to the Israelite foreigners, and they receive it, that the circumcision would see that, and through jealousy would desire that. And by desiring it, listen to it, and might be saved. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, right? So if the casting away of the circumcision that didn't believe led to reconciling or joining back the rest of the Israelites that were scattered, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? So if their casting away led to the joining of the rest of the Israelites, what would their receiving of the word be? Meaning, like he's saying, it would be that much more great. NLT, for since their rejection meant that God offered salvation to the rest of the world, which are Israelites, not everybody. Salvation is only for the nation of Israel. The rest of the world here are Israelites that would receive it secondly, right? Remember, Paul said first to the Jews, then to the Gentiles. Those were Israelites in a Gentile state of mind. So it says here, for since their rejection meant that God offered salvation to the rest of the world, their acceptance will be even more wonderful. It will be life for those who were dead, spiritually dead, right? Dead to the way of salvation, to the way of righteousness. For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches, right? Because Israel was the founded, right, in holiness, right? Like the Lord mentioned, we were planted a good olive tree. So our roots, going back to our forefathers, right, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the start of this, which when you look at a family tree, that's where it starts, right? You start somewhere, and then there are branches. So those that come of them are also holy. Yeah, it says here in the NIV, if part of the dough offered as first fruits is holy, then the whole batch is holy. If the root is holy, so are the branches. Verse 17. So if where it starts is holy, then the rest that comes of it is also holy. And if some of the branches be broken off, so this tree, right? This Israel being planted as a noble vine, a good tree. But if some of their branches being broken off, which signifies some of the circumcision which were attached to the tree, falling, stumbling, and not believing in the Lord, rejecting salvation, that was likened unto them being broken off. And thou being a wild olive tree, so you Israelite foreigners were likened unto branches on a wild olive tree, because you went astray from the Lord. So if you were grafted in amongst them, and when this grafting in, like this is an actual thing that gets done. Let's look up here, grafting in a tree or tree branch. So it says here, grafting a tree branch involves joining a cutting, which is called a scion, if I'm pronouncing that right, from a desired tree into a rooted tree, the stock, to clone, repair, or add fruit variety. So you take a branch from one tree and you're able to join it to another tree, and it becomes one with that tree. Paul is using that analogy here to liken the joining of the Israelite foreigners, which were likened onto being from a wild olive tree, to the noble vine, all right, or the fold, bringing them back to their not only their knowledge of being Israelites, but the belief in Yahweh Shai, right? So he's saying here, you were a branch of this wild olive tree. You were grafted in amongst them, those that were of the the noble vine that was planted, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree. So you get to partake of the blessings and the commonwealth of Israel because you've been brought back to the fold. Just like if that branch was now joined to a different tree and it gets to enjoy the nutrients from the soil that travel through the roots, through the stem, and all of those good things, right? So Paul's saying here, you in your position, you are grafted in. Don't boast, right? Boast not against the branches. But if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. So keep this in mind. You being brought in, don't start to think of yourself better than they that were already here, right? Those that were of the circumcision, even though some of them did not believe and they fell, right? They were broken off so that you can be grafted in. That doesn't give you the right to boast against them because you originally came from a wild olive tree. NLT, but you must not brag about being grafted in to replace the branches that were broken off. You are just a branch, not the root. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in, right? So, but they fell off so I can be brought in, right? NLT, well, you may say those branches were broken off to make room for me. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. See? So yes, but they were broken off because they didn't believe. You're here because you have faith. So don't get proud because the Lord can take that away from you. So fear and be humble and be grateful that being that you didn't grow, at least in this time, with this tree, but you were brought in, like adopted in, grafted into this tree. Be humble and be glad about it rather than being boastful and thinking, well, you fell so I can come over here. So now I'm some hot shit because I'm here now. No. For if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare thee not. See? So even the branches that grew with this tree, those of the circumcision that knew they were Israelites, that kept these customs, if even them the Lord didn't spare because of their unbelief, you should, let that be a cautionary tale to you that the Lord is not a respecter of persons. So don't walk in a high-minded standpoint because it's a light thing for the Lord to revoke what he has given you. Right? If it be that you're actually not of his sheep, of his fold, but it's a humility thing as well. Verse 22, behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God on them which fell, severity, right? So you can see how severe the Lord is and also how good he is at the same time. Those that fell through their unbelief, it was a severe thing, but toward thee, it was good. If thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou also shalt be cut off. See? That's why he said, don't boast, but rather fear that this mercy the Lord has showed you, that some fell, but mercy was showed to others. So, but just as they were able to fall, you can also fall. So don't get proud. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. See, so just like those branches that fell, if they don't remain in unbelief and they actually, maybe they fell, but the Spirit, has mercy and some of them believe after they after they rejected it before, they can be grafted back in. For God is able to graft them in again. For if thou were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, so you were a branch that came from a wild olive tree, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, because naturally the branch of a wild olive tree would not grow from a good olive tree, but you were grafted in contrary to what would naturally be the case. See, so the Lord did an extraordinary thing in bringing you in against the normal course of nature. How much more these, which be the natural branches? So if the Lord was able to do that for you against nature, how much more, or how much easier would it be to graft in those that were already originally a part of this tree, right? Which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits. So he's saying, I'm making this plain unto you so you don't get wise in your own conceits. That blindness in part is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. So the Lord purposely blinded some of Israel, of the Israelites that knew they were Israelites, of the circumcision, until those that the Israelite foreigners, the certain amount of them that had to believe, would hear the word and come in. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness out of Jacob. See, so the Lord partially blinded the circumcision so that those that were meant to get it, because that's why he said all Israel. But wait, why would the fullness of the Gentiles coming in lead to all Israel being saved? Because those Gentiles were Israelites that didn't know they were Israelites, but they belonged to the fold and they needed to come back. But through this process, because you had some that were of the circumcision that believed, some that were of the uncircumcision that believed, together they made that whole that was destined for salvation. But even through that, you're gonna have those that fell away, that were concluded in unbelief. They would still be saved ultimately through those that were delivered, and Paul mentions that. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, which is Yahushua, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. Right, by teaching us a better way, a way through righteousness, a way of righteousness through belief in him. For this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. So Paul here, right, quoting, let me see if it shows here. Isaiah, right, Isaiah 59 and 20 and 21. So reading this, verse 26 again. And so all Israel will be saved, as the scriptures say, the one who rescues will come from Jerusalem, and he will turn Israel away from ungodliness. And this is my covenant with them, that I will take away their sins. Because that started by the Lord sending Yahushua. That was the beginning. All right, that set everything else in motion. Verse 28, as concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sakes, right? So those of the circumcision became adverse to the gospel so that you could now hear it. But as touching the election, they are beloved for the Father's sakes. So it says here, many of the people of Israel are now enemies of the good news, and this benefits you Gentiles. Yet they are still the people he loves, because he chose their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For the gifts and calling of God are without repentance, right? Because once the gifts and the calling of God are not, you can't withdraw them, you can't undo them, right? In the NKJV, they're irrevocable. For as ye in times past have not believed God, yet have now obtained mercy through their unbelief. So you, in the past, you didn't believe in the Lord. You were living like Gentiles. The word came to them first, but some of them did not believe. That was so the word could then be, after being brought to them, and some of them rejecting it, it could then be brought to you. Okay, and think of it like if there are 10 seats on a bus, and the bus first stops at one neighborhood with like very rich kids, and the Lord is like, damn, I have some that are in the poor neighborhood that need seats on the bus, but there's only 10 seats. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it so only five of those in the rich neighborhood are actually gonna be willing to get on the bus, and the rest of them are gonna say, nah, I'm not getting on that bus. I don't want to get on that bus. And then that way, when the bus comes to the poor neighborhood, there's still some 5 seats left that those that are in the poor neighborhood can get in on and sit in the bus. So like that, the Lord purposely had 5 of those in the rich neighborhood say they don't want to get on the bus. So that could reserve 5 seats at least for those in the poor neighborhood. That is what he means by through you obtain mercy through their unbelief. Even so, have these also, because what would happen if all 10 seats were taken, then the bus can't stop in the poor neighborhood, because where are you going to sit? It can't pick up any more passengers. It's full. right? Just using an analogy to try and make it, make it a bit clearer. Verse 31, even so have these also now not believed, that through your mercy they also may obtain mercy. Now, Paul says this, right? And in one sense, he's saying, as he mentioned up above before, they did not believe, so the word can come to you. But by it coming to you through mercy, the hope is that it would provoke some of them, by seeing that you are obtaining mercy, to come and through their jealousy reflect, repent, and to receive the word, right? That they can also obtain mercy. But the spiritual aspect of this is that some not believing and making way for the Israelite foreigners, some of them being of the elect that would believe, would ultimately lead to mercy for the rest of the nation, because the elect that were amongst the Israelite foreigners believing, it is through those same very elect that those that don't believe are going to come back anyway, right, in the kingdom. So even far ahead on a spiritual level, it is through the belief of the elect that the non-believers amongst the nation of Israel are going to obtain mercy. But it is through the disbelief of the non-believers that the elect here that were of the Israelite foreigners would get the chance to believe, and then through them, bring back the non-believers. In so many words, verse 32, for God hath concluded them all in unbelief, that he might have mercy upon all. It says here, for God has imprisoned everyone in disobedience, so he could have mercy on everyone. And that is, in other words, what we just read up above, right? He made those, the all here are those that were not meant to believe, so that the word could be then preached to those that would believe, and through the mercy given to them, mercy would come to the rest of the nation. Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God, right? Showing you how rich and deep the knowledge of the Lord is. This is the master plan that he set in motion. How unsearchable are his judgments, and his ways past finding out. Because you can't understand, unless the Lord reveals it to you, you can't understand his ways and his reasonings. It's past searching. You can't search it out. It's past finding out. For who hath known the mind of the Lord? Or who hath been his counselor? See? Who knows the inner workings of the Lord's mind? We know but a glimpse, and that's what he shows us. Who has taught the Lord? Oh, do it this way, or do it that way. We're talking about the Most High here. No, that's not a good plan. Do it this way. Nobody. Or who hath first given to him, and it shall be recompensed unto him again. Right. Who has lent to the Lord, and now the Lord needs to pay them back? Nobody. The Lord is a giver. For of him, and through him, and to him are all things, to whom be glory forever. Amen. And that brings us to the end of the book of Romans, the 11th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rechak Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.